Episode 94, the Conspiracy Theory Episode, Part 1. Welcome to the Visionary Variety Podcast, where we cover cool stuff like photo, video, film, books, and technology. So switch on your brain and enjoy the show. Thank you for listening to the podcast this week. I am your host, Daniel Grove. We've also got with us on this episode, Abi León.
Hey, everybody.
And Josh Howell.
Hello, hello.
So this is an episode that has been just brewing, stewing, baking in the back of my mind ever since the podcast launched, and maybe even a little before it launched. I have kind of a love-hate relationship with conspiracy theories, and I've always wanted to do an episode about them. And they do kind of cross over into some of the other topics we cover on the show, such as entertainment, pop culture, and of course, sci-fi and, nerdy, geeky stuff. So I'm really excited to finally just jump right in and do this episode. It may even turn out to be a two-parter. We'll see about that. But in this episode, we're going to talk about a few of our favorite or perhaps least favorite conspiracy theories. And, I'm not sure which, angle you're going to take, Josh, with your theory, if you're going to play devil's advocate or if you're just going to blast it. We'll see.
Yeah, I'm not even entirely sure yet. So we'll see how that goes.
Undecided. All right. Before we jump into discussing or rather debating our theory that we may or may not believe in, I do want to address a few things first. We're going to talk about just the psychology of conspiracy theories, and I don't want this episode to come off as insulting or degrading or making fun of those who believe in these things because, man, conspiracy theories, this general topic has become very, very prevalent in just everyday, the general public. If you post about conspiracy theories on Facebook, you'll find a lot of your friends believe certain things. And, it's kind of like religions. Everyone believes in something, and you may not know until you just come out and ask. But it is surprising the statistics of, the general American population and how many believe in theories and, different interpretations of things. So it's very striking. But if you're listening to this episode and let's say you believe, X theory, or you believe NASA is a lie, or you believe whatever, I don't want you to get an insulting vibe from us. I hope to remain respectful. But I do get some entertainment value out of certain conspiracy theories because they do test our understanding of reality. And I think that's a big underlying theme of this whole subculture of, not accepting what's presented to us in the news and believing in an alternate truth. And that's totally fine to question everything, right? But I do get some entertainment value when certain things just test my limits of reality past a certain point. But we'll get to that later. So first, let's talk about a real quick, history of conspiracy theories. Now, I've heard a few different takes on it, but the main one that I've come across is that the term conspiracy theory was actually propagated by the government themselves during the JFK assassination time. So when it happened, there was a lot of backlash and a lot of, alternate theories as to who and why and, perhaps what killed him, multiple shooters, the government being involved, CIA, weird stuff like that with JFK. And I think the conspiracy theory term was generated by the government to kind of cast doubt on all of those alternate theories that contradicted what the government was presenting as, their story, quote unquote.
My understanding is the exact same. Obviously, the theories have been around long before the actual term.
Sure.
But defining it with that term, that's my understanding.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it was meant to have kind of a negative connotation towards those who believed in these conspiracy theories. It's like, oh, you guys and your, silly little theories and your wacky, ideas out there that, they shouldn't be taken seriously. Listen to the government, that kind of deal.
I think before that era, they were just called government cover-ups, or they were just called cover-ups, because they could have been a church cover-up, for example. Yeah, I agree. I think that was the formalization of the term.
And it's important to also understand the flip side of the coin is that some quote unquote conspiracy theories have become, proven, or rather come to light that they were actually true all along.
Right.
And I don't want to go into a list. That could be an episode on its own, honestly. And you can find some really interesting YouTube videos that have really great citation and facts and, just really diving into, the top 10 conspiracy theories that were proven true or whatever. That's a fun rabbit hole to go down. And you also learn some interesting history along the way too. But, some of the things that just came to mind immediately were things like the CIA was actually working with drug dealers to bring cocaine into the U.S.
Right.
There was theories about that for years. And of course, a certain group of people said, oh, yeah, they're actually colluding with the drug dealers. And the other side, oh, no, that's ridiculous. The government would never do that. But then it actually came out, yeah, they were actually doing that.
Yeah.
Other things are the existence of Area 51 was, finally declassified. I think it was in 2013, 2015. When they came out and said, yeah, like officially, yeah. And I mean, that thing's been rumored about since the 60s or 70s at least. And also the existence of UFOs was declassified, or rather acknowledged, and pulling a classic government card. They got a new fancy abbreviation for them, the UAP. Was it unidentified aerial phenomenon?
Yes.
Yep.
UAPs.
They're not UFOs, they're UAPs. And so that's a big deal when the government finally comes out and says, oh, okay. We'll admit this, or we'll give it this a name because we're actually acknowledging it as a real thing or a real place or a real event. And that's nice when the government finally gives us a little bit of truth. It's fun.
Yeah.
Let's shift gears and talk a little bit about the internal situation of a conspiracy theory, such as the psychology and possibly even the psychosis. I'm no neuroscientist. I'm not a psychologist. I have known quite a few people, interacted with a lot of people that believe very heavily in certain theories and worldviews that center around a cover-up or a conspiracy. And, I can't help but notice just really interesting, kind of reoccurring themes and personal quirks and personality stuff that kind of centers around these people that believe so strongly in these things. So I think one attraction that conspiracy theories have is that we as humans love having answers to things, going back into ancient human days, whether you believe in the Stone Age with, Neanderthals and things like that, or early prehumans, or if you just believe in, the biblical presented history of mankind, going back to the most ancient days of humankind, we love understanding the mysteries of the universe. And whether we have to make up answers, or we make superstition, or we use science and, actual facts to discover what's the root cause of this thing, we love having those answers. But I think that's a big attractive thing, is having the answer to the secret. What do you guys think about that?
I watched a video today by a YouTuber named Joe Scott, and I thought it was really relevant to this topic because the YouTube article or the YouTube video was called "The Pea-Sized Gland That Controls Your Thoughts," and he basically goes into the physiological happenings as to why people have certain inclinations, whether it be political or ideological. And he goes through this whole, his stuff is well researched. He researches this stuff for months and before he basically does a video essay, a long form video essay, anywhere between 10 to 15 minutes. My point is that he boils it down to the amygdala. So, your brain is split in half. You have a left side and a right side. And depending on the size of your amygdala gland, for example, and this is what he quipped about this. He thought it was interesting. People whose right side of the amygdala is bigger tend to be more flight mode. In other words, more protective, more conservative. People who have equal size amygdala on both halves tend to be, relatively balanced, moderate people. And people who have left actually are less fear-based and things like that.
Analytical.
So, analytical, logical. And so they look at things through their eye gate more than their heart gate kind of thing. He doesn't say that, but I'm adding a little bit there. But
Christianese.
Yeah. But he was talking about, he said it was really interesting because he said people that have a right amygdala bigger tend to lean more conservative, are more are people that are Republicans, are people that are that believe in conspiracies, that are for the Second Amendment adamantly because they want to protect more.
Yeah, the feeling.
Yeah, they have the feeling. So I think in what you're talking about is having self-control is part of that flight mode. Like you want to protect, you want to make sure that you and yours is protected, and so anything that is outside of your purview of knowledge, like the adage says, things that you don't understand, you fear. I feel that a conspiracy is a form of mental control. Like, no, they're trying to hide something from me, so I'm going to control this knowledge. They're lying to me,
Yeah.
and you have this fear, which is associated with flight and
Preservation.
Yeah. And so, I'll share. I don't know if we can put it in the show notes or anything, but I'll share the link. It was really, really insightful. I think a lot of that stems from there. Like, we want to have control. We want to know everything. We want to have, like you said, we want to have the answers.
Because we want to survive. We want to persist and preserve ourselves and our family.
Yeah.
Evolutionists will say, that's just the preservation instinct. Believers in the Bible will say, well, that's how God designed us. Two sides of the coin. Yeah, I think that it's part of the human mind to find patterns. And if a pattern leads to something approaching us that is harmful, then we're going to go into, fight or flight. We're going to try to defend ourselves. And I feel like when people are coming across news articles about certain topics, or if they're studying science and not understanding some things, they see patterns, or they see holes in a pattern that's presented to them, and they come up with an alternate theorem or theory to, hypothesize, okay, well, what's
could
causing
that have
this
been?
thing?
Yeah.
Yeah, they're connecting the dots. And I think that's where we can hit slippery slopes. We can either come to the truth through that pattern recognition, or we can go down a very slippery slope of coming up with really wild theories that are so far off.
Yeah.
I love to make fun of, mostly in crime movies and shows where there's detective work going on, there's always a crazy wall. Y'all know what a crazy wall is?
With all the pictures and like strings
Oh,
running
crazy wall.
around.
Clippings.
Yeah.
Yeah, so crazy walls. I mean, man, so many movies have that cliche. It's an awful cliche. I don't think they're actually used or effective in real life, but they sure look cool with a wide angle lens. And they're in so many movies and shows. I always just like go, oh, there it is, when it finally makes its appearance on a show.
Yeah, it's called mind mapping.
Mind mapping.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's the official term. But when you get a little off center, it becomes a crazy wall.
Yeah.
But that's where people are collecting various, what seem to be disconnected facts. And we're connecting them. We're making those connections. We're connecting the dots, usually with red string.
Right.
And in Heroes, and this is a random side, bunny trail, but in the show Heroes, they took Crazy Wall to a whole new level. The character had a whole room. It was like a 3-dimensional crazy wall. It was awesome.
Yeah. Another really good show as far as having the mind maps or the crazy walls, whatever you want to call them, is Criminal Minds. The character Dr. Spencer Reed. I mean, just about every episode, he's writing on a wall. He's grabbing a dry erase marker and writing on the windows.
Classic.
Or
window writing. Oh yeah.
It is definitely a cliche.
So what I call this is leaps in logic. Now, I don't know if that's an official term. Someone smarter than me may understand where I'm going with this, but I see leaps in logic happen when we've got disconnected facts. We have a theory that explains the connection, and we make a hard connection between the two. And we say, aha, see, this leads to this. But you're missing a lot of facts in between that totally destroy your theory.
Yeah.
Yes.
Either through ignorance or through laziness or through denial. I have a friend on Facebook who is really into conspiracy theories. And to the point where it's just like a little overboard, maybe a lot overboard. One of the things he posted was about Neil Armstrong. If you abbreviate his last name, you get an A, right? Neil A. What happens if you spell that backwards? It spells alien. Boom.
Wow.
Sounds like I'm making fun of him. It sounds like I'm kidding, but this is a thing.
Yeah.
Wow.
In the conspiracy theory world. And that's kind of a silly example, but it is a case where it's like they're seeing what they want to see, and they're saying, aha, look at this, guys. I found the secret they've been covering up all these years. And my questions, I had so many questions for him. None of them were satisfactorily answered, of course. But I'm thinking, okay, so they picked Neil Armstrong because of his name? Or are they looking for people whose name spelled alien and they found him? Like, surely there's other qualifying factors that got him at that position. To have that aha moment about his name spelling alien backwards, first you have to accept that aliens are real. Second, you have to believe that there was a purpose in using him for that. There's just so many other things that go into that not making any sense and it just being a straight up coincidence, And I don't know. It's just crazy. So I know a few other examples of this selective, truth seeking, selective pattern recognition is the curvature of the Earth issue with flat Earth, and we'll get into this because this is actually Josh's theory. So this is very boiled down, but I see this in so many different forms and versions where it's basically this sentence: I can't see the curvature of the Earth with my eye, therefore there is no curvature. Like, because they can't observe it with their limited ability to observe or understand something, therefore it doesn't exist.
Yeah.
And that's such small thinking. That'll kick you out of a lot of truth, that thought process right there.
Yeah.
I can't see God. I can't touch him physically, therefore he doesn't exist. Like, no, there's so much more to the universe than the physical realm. And I mean, he's God. He made the physical realm. Why should he be limited to it?
I mean, you can't see oxygen.
Mm-hmm.
You don't walk outside and go, wow, that's a whole lot of oxygen around me right now. This is crazy. But it's still there. We know it's scientifically been proven that it's there, and we have to have it to live.
Through methods beyond our five senses, such as scientific theory and chemical tests and things like that, we have discovered it. But if we only relied on our 3-pound brain to comprehend something right off the bat with, just one of our senses, say sight or touch, like, you're not going to learn a lot about the universe if you're relying on those two things.
Right.
The third example of this is, maybe we'll talk about this in a little bit about gang stalking. Basically, this mindset is, I meet eyes with people regularly, say driving or at Starbucks. Therefore, they're on an assignment to watch me. They're connecting these very obscure dots and then making this really big connection in between the two dots that just should not be there. And they're ignoring a lot of facts in the middle. So a lack of understanding can bring about an intense desire to have an alternate explanation.
The video that I watched today really brought it home to me. I think that it's bigger than just the way you're thinking. I think there's a physiological bend, chemical imbalance that, and I could speak to chemical imbalances all day long just because I've been through that. I think there's a lot to be said about that as well. And I think I posted on Facebook one time that sometimes we try to spiritually bypass or wash away things just because we don't understand them, and we neglect, because of our ideological inclination, we neglect scientific progress. But science has proven, maybe it hasn't disproven faith, but some of the things that we think were evil spirits, or even some of the things that happened during medieval times, have now been clarified through science, and sometimes people just don't want to hear that. And so, hearing things like what I watched in the video today provide a very feasible and viable explanation as to why people have these kinds of thoughts. The more understanding and the more scientific progress that we can do, I think it's better for society as a whole. Not saying that science is the answer, because I think there's a mixture. There has to be a balance there, because even science is faith.
Yes,
just a different term.
Yeah, brain chemistry is. I can definitely see how that's playing a bigger factor than maybe is generally understood. And we're still learning so much about the brain today. I think that's going to come to the light more, is how that all works.
Yeah.
I mean, I came across an article. Well, the title of the article is "The Politics of Unhappiness: The Surprising Link Between Conspiracy Theories and Mental Health." What they were talking about in this specific article were people that felt ostracized and from mainstream society. And so they actually went through an experiment and had people write down how they felt about certain things. I mean, if they had a falling out with a friend, they wrote that down and wrote down what they felt about that, and the meaning, and their search for meaning in their life, and just some other subjects, and some of the conspiracies, and some of the conspiracy theories that are out there. And the results were shown that the people that felt more lonely than others, they leaned more into believing the conspiracies. So
Wow.
let's be nerdy for a second. Star Trek, the final frontier is space, or you hear people go, "Oh, the final frontier is the ocean and the depths of the oceans." To me, it's the brain, because there's just so much that we just don't know, and the chemistry of the brain and electrolyte imbalances and chemical imbalances affect everybody in such different ways
Hmm.
that I mean, there's the Journal of Experimental Social Psychology is actually the one that published this study that
Scary.
that I just mentioned, that because there's so much of the brain that we don't understand, it's considered so experimental social psychology. And
Whoa.
brain chemistry and everything has a lot to do with it, but at the same time, I also think once you find a truth that that you're comfortable with, that doesn't make you have to I don't know necessarily face I hate to say it this way, but to face the realities of the world,
Mm.
and it's your security blanket.
Yeah,
And
because you have sense of stability, sense of normalcy.
yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah. So for those who believe in a conspiracy theory, or if you are beginning to, go down the path of, well, I think this is actually, legit. I think this thing is real. You have to be able to step back and look at the theory, look at your understanding, look at the patterns that you're seeing or the patterns that others are presenting to you, and ask some important questions. For a conspiracy theory to be true, it requires a person or persons to do the thing. It requires a method to achieve that goal, and it has to have an intent or an agenda. Let's take gang stalking, for example. If you're not familiar with this, there is a really interesting documentary on YouTube about gang stalking. And basically, gang stalking has nothing to do with gangs. And very little to do with stalking, ironically. Discuss amongst yourselves. But but it's basically this feeling that people get. They call themselves a TI, or a targeted individual, and they believe with all their heart that the government or some entity is stalking them through means of various individuals, groups of people, inconvenient situations, even such things like traffic jams are set up strictly to annoy you, to slowly drive you crazy, and to inconvenience you as a form of psychological warfare, just meant for you, specifically just for you, and other targeted individuals that are experiencing this gang stalking phenomenon. And it's just so sad to learn about this because these people live their life in constant paranoia, constant watching and seeing these patterns. They see a helicopter go overhead and it's really loud, and they're like, oh, there's another one. They're doing it again today, or this slow down in traffic. Every time I switch lanes, it's a slow lane. These guys must be in on it. They're part of the program of just gang stalking me and ruining my day.
Hmm.
And it's really sad to live in that kind of that life of paranoia. But these questions come to mind: is who has an agenda to just target you, to spend all these resources on ruining your day? To what end, and why is it beneficial to some government program or some secret society or whatever? How do they recruit these people and pay them off and keep them secret? No one's come out and said, oh yeah, I was hired to gang stalk like last year or whatever. There has to be people involved. There has to be a method to do that. Like, how do they coordinate all these traffic jams and people walking by your car to annoy you, and the dogs barking across the street? Like, how is all this stuff coordinated? It just is not logical. And I feel like a lot of conspiracy theorists kind of just breeze over these questions. Like, how is there people involved with this? Why is there people, and how are they doing this thing? Those questions often go unanswered.
I think it has a lot to do with what you said earlier about our innate need to know the answers, and so then that becomes a very narcissistic feeling. And I was just having a debate with somebody a couple of days ago, and we started out discussing frequency or Bluetooth frequencies, pass through the brain and how it affects you. Okay, conspiracy theory, right? And well, it's a non-ionizing frequency, which means that it can't interact with the. It doesn't affect. Yeah, it doesn't affect our molecules. But then he kept moving the goalpost. He said, "Well, no," but I'm like, "Okay, yeah," but and then he just kept going further, and then I debunked that, and then he kept going to another one.
Yes.
And I'm like, "Hold on a second." I'm like, "We were 10 minutes into this conversation, and now you're talking about radio waves across the planet." I'm like, we're not there yet. I'm like, I'm just trying to get you to agree with this initial point right here about non-ionizing frequencies between Bluetooth headphones. They don't do nothing to your brain. I've shown you. And he's like, no, but what I'm saying is well, that's not what we started out arguing and debating. So they move the goalposts because they have this innate desire to have the answers for everything.
Yeah.
Youth might have a little bit to do with that too, but generally speaking, you let that go unchecked and nobody checks you, and you're a beta male trying to be alpha or whatever, and you turn 30, you turn 40, and you're this person who 100 positively believes that 9/11 was a cover up, and you're 100 positively sure that NASA faked the moon landings, and you're 100 because nobody's ever come along to at least guide you in your reasoning and say, hey, hold on a second.
Yeah.
Let's check your logic here. All right. We started here, but you went unchecked and you ended up over here. So let's go back to the original point, which was this. Do you agree with, well, okay, I concede that. All right. Okay. That's it. That's, I'm not saying that's a win for me or that's a win for you. We've just discovered something that you knew you were wrong in, and so then once a person can realize, okay, yeah, I understand that I'm not right all the time. Again, it goes back to our innate desire to be right about everything, which goes back to, depending on where your inclination is as far as creation is concerned, back to man's desire to be able to do everything on his own, and not have a need for fellowship with a divine creator. Or an all-father.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, we want to feel special. We want to have the key, all on our own. We don't want to have to rely on God or some other source to get it to us. We definitely don't want to sacrifice and give stuff up to get to a point of stability. We just want to have it. We don't want to have the secret. And then it kind of comes full circle when we find a community of others that believe in this, this really outlandish thing or this secret cover up or this whatever, this secret to life, when we find a community, then it really gets even deeper knit into, our subconscious of this is how the world is. And, and the internet has really helped, if you can use that word, with conspiracy theory culture, because man, the age of information has just exploded and everyone can find someone that believes anything. I mean, you type in any wacky thing online, someone believes it. You could type in Jesus was a woman. I'm sure there is someone out there that literally believes that Jesus was actually a woman and that the patriarchy covered it up and changed it to a male because this and that, it just never ends. So finding that community can really solidify certain beliefs, and it kind of keeps you from asking the bigger questions like the who, the why, the what, the where, and when. And rather just keeps you believing you've got the secret.
Or is it necessary to existence? That's the other thing too. Like questions that are non-existential or existential, like knowing the answer to, whether, for example, the Da Vinci Code, whether Jesus was married or not. Does that change the status of our salvation? Does that negate the fact that we believe that he was crucified and rose on the third day? Does that negate? No, it actually doesn't, biblically speaking, because there's a whole bunch of reasons why that's not the point of this podcast. But that's the other thing, I think.
So before we get into actually talking about our individual theories, I just kind of wanted to give a little quick list, just to whet your appetite. In my opinion, some of the more popular conspiracy theories. The first one, of course, is the 9/11 cover-up. That's a big, juicy one. There is a flat Earth, which we'll talk about. There's hollow Earth. That's a favorite of mine. That there's actually a star in the middle of the Earth, and
I've always liked that one. I just like
it's so fantasy.
I like the thought of it.
Like Game of Thrones, they live on the inside of a sphere, don't they? The intro with the. Yeah,
totally missed that.
And the intro, the title sequence of Game of Thrones, the camera zooming down this kind of a 3D rendered world, and it's on the inside of the curvature of a sphere, and there's a star up above that's like a Geary stylized star thing.
No way! I'm gonna have to rewatch that intro.
Yeah, I hadn't noticed that.
No,
look up Game of Thrones Hollow Earth. Maybe there's something there.
All right, while you read the rest of the list, I'm gonna look that up.
Maybe I'm an idiot. I don't know. And maybe I'm seeing patterns that aren't there. All right.
Your right amygdala is bigger.
It's getting bigger. Another one that kind of ties into the previous two theories is that NASA is full of complete lies. NASA is a company that makes really good CGI scenes, even back to the 60s, to make us believe that space is out there. There's planets and we live on a sphere and yada, yada, yada. Another one is chemtrails. That's a really popular one, believing that the lines that we see up in the sky that are behind large airlines are actually like chemicals that control us or weaken us, whatever. Which would tie into the whole fluoride theory, which is that fluoride is part of government mind control to weaken our pineal gland. That dovetails into the next one, which is big pharma holding back cures for cancer so they can make more money. I definitely see some stuff towards that one, personally. Not too crazy. Then there's Illuminati controlling everything. I'm going to be talking about Illuminati. That's going to be a fun one. Then there's lizard people living among us, shapeshifters, like Obama, naturally, and Lady Gaga, because
right.
That's what lizard people want to do. There's the Simpsons foretelling the future. There's the moon landing being a fake, and a hollow moon or flat moon, which is a new one that I've discovered recently.
Yeah.
Some people believe that the moon is a disk of plasma. I don't know why.
I hadn't heard that one. That one's crazy.
I've heard it's holographic projection. And that's from the flat earth people too.
I saw some interesting stuff about the moon being hollow, and that when the moon landing happened, that apparently there was this long-lasting ringing sound that was recorded, like a bell being rung.
I think it was Apollo
11.
Was that 11?
11.
Okay. Yeah. But it was one of the Apollo ones after that, I think, that actually like
the seismic.
Yeah, it was. They said, it was a site. They were doing seismic recordings. That one's actually
they're like, this can only happen if it's hollow.
Yeah.
So
because it rang for hours or something like that. It rang for a long time.
So strange.
I will say another theory idea that was not on this list that I find very interesting is the conspiracy theory about the Denver airport.
Do tell.
So the thought is they built basically an entire underground city underneath the Denver airport. So like when the nukes start dropping, the government
all the elites.
All the elite, the government, all that stuff is going to go down there.
Elite resort.
There's something about the horse statue outside the Denver airport.
Oh yeah.
Its eyes are orange, but at night they glow red. So it's this demon horse, and it's one of the horses. It's one of the horses that the four horsemen of the apocalypse rides. That the artist that was building the statue, it fell on top of him and killed him.
Oh yeah, killed him.
And then his son completed it. And so there's the Denver airport, and there's paintings. There's paintings about this throughout the Denver airport. And the whole thing is just weird. The YouTube videos about it are crazy and a lot of fun to watch. And every time I end up flying through the airport, I never have enough time to go look at these paintings.
Dang.
And it drives me nuts.
I was just
I want
there.
to see these.
Yeah, I was just there in September. And that was the first thing I do because I had a huge layover, like 6 hours. I'm like, I'm going to go do this.
Oh, wow.
And they said they closed everything down. I'm like, dun, dun, dun. I'm like, wait, what do you mean they closed everything down? And they said, oh, it's nothing nefarious. They're actually revamping it because it's such a tourist attraction. They're actually going to make a tour out of it.
Oh, that's awesome!
Of course they are.
So they're monetizing it.
Oh, that's the thing with the funny graphics, right?
Yeah. Everything. Yeah.
Oh, like so funny.
The gas mask guy with the sword swinging over a bunch of kids from around the world, and some of them are dead underneath them and stuff like that. It's just
the paintings are very dark. And just you're like, why are these in an airport of all places?
Mm-hmm.
So the closed down areas where they're remodeling, they had these hilarious big graphic spreads put up.
Yeah.
That are like totally trolling. So like one of them says construction or cover up, and there's a construction hat with an Illuminati triangle eye. Yeah, they're totally fun. Another one's got a lady just posing like glamorously with a lizard head, and it says, "What are we doing?" And then there's like bullet points. It says, "Adding amazing new restaurants and bars, building an Illuminati headquarters, and remodeling the lizard people's lair."
Yeah.
Oh,
that's so great.
I actually know the guy who designed the rails for it. I know him personally.
Nice.
He's a personal friend of mine, and he was the person in charge of leading that whole electrical build. And he's like, yeah, there's basements down there, but he says that they're all maintenance halls and stuff like that. He says, what they were trying to do is they were trying to create they were trying to build for the future, like because they already had a good airport. So this airport was redundant. Denver didn't
Yeah.
need another one. But what they were trying to do is they were trying to create Denver as this big hubbub and draw businesses there, which they haven't drawn business. So it, so now they're monetizing on this phenomenon of
Smart.
yeah. So it's like they were trying to create this big, huge draw of businesses that kind of never came.
Didn't work
Yeah,
out.
and so
Plan B, guys.
yeah. A couple things that I wanted to add to the list was cryptozoology, and that's like Loch Ness Monster, Bigfoot.
Yeah.
Duh. How did I not have that on there?
Yeah, Abominable Snowman. The Yeti, Sasquatch, Chupacabra, all of those things. I think that's those are.
Is that a thing in Mexico?
It was actually origins are in Puerto Rico.
Yes.
And,
okay. Didn't know that.
They're all over the world. Almost every continent has a different one. I mean, Texas has its own, the jackalope. I mean,
Yeah.
I think it's pretty interesting.
That'd be a cool documentary.
Yeah.
Cryptozoology around the world.
Yeah, there actually is. There is several. I think there's one on Netflix that it's called Monster Hunters, I think is what it's called.
Oh, nice. That sounds fun.
The other thing I think goes along with the Denver airport is CERN.
Oh yeah,
CERN.
that's a deep one.
Yeah, that one's huge. That's its own episode as well. And
yeah, it is. That gets into Satanism, portals across dimensions.
Yeah, opening up portals and stuff like that. Yeah.
Gosh, Shiva.
Yeah.
The cryptozoology, actually, there's a show on Discovery Channel, actually, which, what are they discovering? I mean, they're just giving us shows about street racing and a show.
There's no more discoveries.
Yeah, there really isn't. The show Expedition Unknown. I actually really enjoy that show, but he did a couple of seasons ago. I think he did an entire season. So it was like 8 or 9 episodes where he was trying to find the Yeti. And then he had an episode where he went down to Puerto Rico to find the Chupacabra. He's done this stuff, and I'm like, you are a legitimate archaeologist. That's what your degree is in, and you're getting paid to do a television show that is supposedly to educate the masses, and you're trying to find the Yeti for 9 episodes.
Wow.
So, but yeah. Anyway,
one more of mine that's it's a personal favorite is that Hitler moved to South America. To Argentina.
Oh yeah,
that's my favorite one of all time, and the reason it's my favorite of all time is because I've known about this one since before the internet. I remember reading a book in the 80s that talked about, and some magazines about Hitler and a lot of the officers moving to South America and Argentina. That's one of my favorites.
Yeah,
conspiracy.
That one has some factual evidence to back it up.
It does.
Yes.
So it's an actual conspiracy. The conspiracy theory would be that Hitler was left alive, and while that is still a theory, the conspiracy still is that the Germans, that the officers and all that stuff, that they actually, that's not even a conspiracy anymore. That's proven that they came to Argentina and settled. There's complete German towns. I mean, here in Central Texas, I mean, we have New Berlin, we have New Braunfels, we have all of these little cities where they sprung up in the late 1800s, and they had big population booms in the 50s, and we're like, where'd all these Germans come from? I mean, so that's a local conspiracy theory.
I will say, as far as the Hitler going to Argentina, I won't lie, that's one that I have done a deep dive in, and research, I do.
Yeah, me too. Me too.
There's a whole lot of evidence that points to it. The biggest one, and I know we're kind of getting sidetracked, but the biggest part of the
isn't that the nature of conspiracy theories, though?
Yes, that's exactly. The body that was found in the Führer bunker was a female body.
Yeah, female body.
The Russians found the body, took the body back to Moscow, ran quote unquote test determined that it was Hitler, and then burned the body before the Americans could ever see it. And so everything that has been reported that Hitler's body was found in the Fuhrer bunker comes from this report that the Russians gave to America and said, yes. But the evidence that has been found since then is suggesting that it was actually Eva Braun. It was a female body.
It was a female body,
Hitler's girlfriend.
It was one of the mistresses, But I don't even think it was Eva Braun. I think she went with him to Argentina.
That's possible.
There's a gentleman that I just saw a picture of that claims to be from Argentina, that claims to be Hitler's like great grandson, and and he looks just like the pictures of Hitler. It's like, okay, yeah, he was in Germany. There's actually a show. I can't remember which network it's on, but it's called Hunting Hitler.
History Channel.
Nice.
I've literally watched all 3 seasons of it.
Yeah. And I think they ended up getting kicked out of a whole lot of, because by the 3rd season, everybody in Argentina was onto them, and they're like getting locked down at every door.
Oh, man.
Yeah, I mean, it was crazy that at one point they went into a city there in Argentina and came across a closed down school that on the front of the building, at the kind of the roof line of the building, was the German eagle holding the swastika.
No,
it was absolutely crazy.
I remember one episode where one of the kids that actually went to the German school ran away, and she married an Argentinian boy, and she was exiled from her family. I don't know the names, but I think it was one of the episodes, and they immigrated to the United States, and they were interviewed just recently, and they were talking about, the German culture is alive and well, and just crazy stuff. Yeah, so we know that a lot of the German Reich and the officers and their families and those
always scotch-free.
Yeah. I just found that picture of the guy that's claiming to be Hitler's grandson.
Yeah.
And he's standing next to a picture of Hitler, and that's creepy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, we know from the real documentary, Iron Sky, that Adolf Hitler went to the center of the earth, currently rides on the back of a T-Rex, and in the middle of the earth on the inside.
Well, there you go. Hollow Earth.
Hitler, dinosaurs, a bunch of theories.
Isn't Iron Sky the moon? Is it the moon? Is it Hollow Earth and the moon?
Well,
right? They put a base on the moon or something like that?
The Nazis escaped to the moon and were heading out for 40, 50 years and came back for their final strike. Fourth Reich? I don't know.
Yeah.
That's what it is. Yeah.
It's the Fourth Reich.
All right, we're going to have to end this episode right here because unfortunately our recording went so long that I'm going to have to do what we did with the Matrix episodes and split this into a 2-parter. So join us next week as we discuss some really juicy conspiracy theories such as the Illuminati and the Flat Earth and some other really interesting ones. Thank you so much for listening. We would love to hear your thoughts on this episode. You can write us on our email at tvvpodcast@gmail.com or comment or message us at any of our social medias such as Facebook or Instagram. Thanks again for listening to this one, and we'll be with you next week. If you like this show, be sure to subscribe on your favorite podcast app. You can also find our previous episodes there and listen whenever you want. We love to hear from our listeners, so if you have any comments or suggestions for future episodes, you can reach us at tvvpodcast@gmail.com. Thanks for listening and have a great week.